courtroom fell into a suffocating stillness the moment the doors opened, and Daniel Walker stepped inside, his boots echoing across the polished floor like the footsteps of a man walking back into a war zone he thought he had already left behind. His shoulders were tense, his eyes hollow yet steady, and hanging proudly against his chest was the Medal of Honor, gleaming gold, a symbol of sacrifice that had cost him far more than anyone in that room could understand. He was not here as a hero today. He was here as a father fighting for the only thing that had kept him alive after the battlefield, his daughter. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and judging people by their hearts instead of their scars, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more good souls. Daniel could feel the weight of the crowd pressing in on him. Rows of families who had lost loved ones stood silently holding framed photographs to their chests. Their pain was real, and he respected it deeply, but today their accusations were pointed at him like sharpened spears. They believed Daniel was responsible for the chaos of a rescue mission gone wrong 3 years earlier, an operation where he had saved 12 fellow soldiers, but could not save the son of one grieving mother sitting in the front row. They did not know the whole story, and Daniel had never once defended himself, believing that being misunderstood was a small price to pay for honoring a fallen comrade's secrets. But today that silence was being used against him. The judge, firm-voiced and coldly rigid, glared down at Daniel as though the medal on his chest were an insult to the courtroom itself. Daniel stood at attention, not by choice, but by muscle memory from a life lived under orders. He kept his hands behind him as instructed, though every fiber of him shook with the fear of losing custody of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. She was sitting quietly in the second row, her small hands clutching the stuffed toy her father had carried for her through deployments and sleepless nights. She didn't understand why the world was angry at her dad. She only understood that he was the safest place she had ever known. When the judge ordered Daniel to remove his Medal of Honor because it was a distraction, a low wave of murmurs swept through the court. To Daniel, that request felt like someone demanding he erase the memories of the brothers he lost, the promises he kept, and the nights he still woke up reliving explosions in the desert heat. But Daniel did not argue. He slowly reached for the ribbon, his fingers trembling as though he were touching something sacred. That medal had been placed on him while the world saluted, but in his heart, it belonged to the men who never came home. He hesitated not because of pride, but because it hurt to let go of the last piece of them he carried publicly. He knew if he removed it now, some would take it as an admission of guilt. Others would think he no longer deserved to wear it. Yet the judge's eyes remained fixed, impatient, waiting for him to obey. The courtroom door creaked open before Daniel could unpin the clasp. A collective shift rippled through the room. People turned, whispers rising like a gust of wind before a storm. Standing in the doorway was a woman in full white naval uniform, her posture rigid, her expression fierce with a controlled fire that demanded respect. Rows of ribbons lined her chest, and her presence seemed to straighten even the judge's back. She stepped forward with calm but unmistakable authority. Her eyes scanned the room, stopping on Daniel, flicking briefly to his daughter, and then settling on the judge. Without a word spoken aloud, her stance declared that something was about to change, and no one dared breathe too loudly. The Admiral had known Daniel long before medals and headlines. She knew the mission the court was now twisting against him. She knew what he had sacrificed, what he had chosen to keep hidden to protect another family from a truth that would break them. She walked directly to Daniel and stood beside him, her presence shielding him like the wall he never asked for but desperately needed. When she turned to face the judge, everyone could feel the power in the room shift. Eyewitnesses would later say the judge's sternness cracked for the first time that day. The Admiral addressed the court with a steady intensity that cut through the tension forming like ice on glass. Though her words weren't quoted here, the message she carried shattered assumptions. She brought sealed evidence, classified details from military command, revealing what Daniel had never dared to say. The fallen soldier whose family blamed Daniel had made a dying request. He had asked Daniel to save the others, not him. It was an order, whispered through blood and dust, that Daniel had carried silently for years, refusing to tell the grieving mother that her son had chosen self-sacrifice to save his team. When the truth surfaced, the weight of the room collapsed into stunned silence. The photographs held against hearts began to shake in trembling hands. Tears welled in eyes that moments ago had held only anger. Even the judge faltered, staring at Daniel not as an accused man, but as someone who had carried a burden no human should have to bear alone. Lily looked around in confusion but clung tightly to her father's leg, sensing the shift but not understanding its magnitude. The Admiral placed her hand lightly on Daniel's shoulder, not in comfort, but in recognition of the courage it took to stay silent for honor's sake. She made one final statement to the judge, standing tall, unyielding, her voice carrying the weight of generations of service. Whatever she said was enough to make the judge lower her gaze in shame and withdraw the demand for Daniel to remove his medal. The courtroom, which once burned with accusation, now softened into something fragile: respect, regret, and a quiet understanding of sacrifice. Daniel did not break down, though everyone expected him to. He simply closed his eyes and breathed, a long, shaking breath he hadn't allowed himself to release in years. Lily wrapped her arms around him, whispering that she knew he was a good dad, the best dad. And for the first time in a long time, Daniel allowed himself to believe it. If this story reached your heart, please like the video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today. Your support truly helps. Before the final moment, a last gentle request. Comment below what part of this story touched you the most. And as the courtroom slowly emptied, the judge's gavel echoing a new beginning rather than an ending, Daniel stood tall, not because of the medal on his chest, but because of the truth finally allowed to breathe. The Admiral saluted him silently, and he returned it with gratitude only warriors could understand. For the first time since the battlefield, Daniel Walker walked out not as a wounded veteran, not as a man carrying blame that wasn't his, but as a father finally stepping into the light again.